You've probably heard that to be spiritual, you need to meditate for hours, give up all your stuff, and live like a monk. But what if I told you that these ideas are actually stopping you from finding true enlightenment? Crazy, right? Well, buckle up, because we're about to unmask some of the biggest myths in spirituality that might be holding you back without you even knowing it. Today, we're diving deep into the world of spiritual myths. You know, those things everyone seems to believe about spirituality that just might not be true. We're going to look at 5 big myths that a lot of people fall for. These aren't just little misunderstandings, they're the kind of beliefs that can really get in the way of your spiritual growth. So let's roll up our sleeves and start busting these myths wide open. By the time we're done, you'll have a whole new way of looking at your spiritual journey. Let's kick things off with a big one. How many times have you heard someone say, "Oh, I'm not spiritual enough because I don't meditate for hours every day"? It's like there's this unwritten rule that unless you're sitting cross-legged on a cushion from dawn till dusk, you're doing it wrong. But here's the thing. That's just not true. First off, let's talk about why this myth is so popular. It comes from a good place, really. Meditation is a powerful tool for spiritual growth. It helps us calm our minds, connect with ourselves, and sometimes even experience moments of real clarity or peace. And there are some spiritual traditions where long meditation sessions are a big deal. But somewhere along the line, people started thinking that more is always better. The problem with this myth is that it sets an impossible standard for most people. Let's be real. Who has hours to sit and meditate every day? If you're working a job, taking care of a family, or just trying to keep up with life, the idea of meditating for hours can seem completely out of reach. And when people believe this myth, it can make them feel like they're failing at spirituality before they even start. But here's the truth. Spirituality isn't about how long you meditate, it's about the quality of your awareness and how you live your life. A person who meditates for 10 minutes a day but really focuses on being kind, honest, and mindful throughout their day is probably growing more spiritually than someone who meditates for hours but then ignores their spiritual practice the rest of the time. Think about it like this. Imagine you're trying to get in shape. Would you rather exercise intensely for 3 hours once a week or do a quick 15-minute workout every day? Most experts would say the daily habit is more effective. It's the same with spiritual practice. Short, regular moments of mindfulness or meditation can be way more powerful than long, infrequent sessions. So, what should you do instead? Start small. Maybe begin with just 5 minutes of meditation or mindful breathing each day. The key is consistency, not duration. As you get more comfortable, you might find yourself naturally wanting to meditate longer. But even if you don't, that's okay. The goal is to bring that sense of calm and awareness into your everyday life. You can also look for ways to be mindful throughout your day. When you're eating, really focus on the taste and texture of your food. When you're walking, pay attention to how your feet feel hitting the ground. These little moments of mindfulness can add up to big spiritual growth over time. Remember, some of the most spiritually enlightened people in history didn't spend all day meditating. They engaged with the world, helped others, and found ways to bring their spiritual practice into everyday life. That's the real goal, not racking up meditation hours like they're points in a game. All right, let's tackle another big myth. The idea that to be really spiritual, you need to give up all your stuff and live like you're in a monastery. This one's a doozy, and it's caused a lot of people to feel guilty about owning things or enjoying life's pleasures. Where does this myth come from? Well, it's got roots in some pretty old ideas. Many spiritual traditions talk about detachment from material things. There are stories of holy people giving up everything they own to follow a spiritual path. And let's face it, in a world where consumerism can get out of hand, the idea of letting go of possessions can seem pretty appealing. But here's the problem. This myth confuses giving up stuff with letting go of attachment to stuff. And that's a big difference. The issue isn't owning things. It's being owned by things. When we believe we need to give up everything to be spiritual, we're missing the point entirely. Think about it this way. If you give away all your possessions, but you're still obsessed with what you don't have, are you really any more spiritual? On the flip side, if you own things, but don't let them define you or control your happiness, aren't you more in line with true spiritual principles? The truth is, it's not about what you have or don't have. It's about your relationship with those things. A truly spiritual person can own a nice house or car and still be detached from them. They enjoy these things while they have them, but they don't freak out if they lose them. Their happiness and sense of self don't depend on their stuff. So, what's a better approach? Instead of trying to get rid of everything you own, work on changing your relationship with your possessions. Here are a few ways to do that. Practice gratitude. Take time each day to appreciate what you have, whether it's a comfy bed, a working coffee maker, or a roof over your head. This helps you enjoy what you have without always wanting more. Regularly declutter. This doesn't mean getting rid of everything, but periodically going through your stuff and letting go of things you don't need or use. It's a practical way to practice non-attachment. Give to others. Sharing what you have, whether it's through donations or just lending a hand to a friend, helps you hold your possessions lightly. Focus on experiences over things. Try to shift your spending towards activities and experiences rather than always buying more stuff. This can help you find joy and fulfillment that isn't tied to material possessions. Use your possessions mindfully. When you use something you own, really appreciate it. Whether it's savoring a meal on your favorite plate or really enjoying the comfort of your car on a long drive, being mindful of your possessions can help you value what you have without being attached to it. Remember, some of the most spiritual people in the world owned things. The point isn't to live with nothing. It's to live in a way where your stuff doesn't own you. You can have a comfortable life and still be on a deep, spiritual path. The key is to keep your priorities straight and not let your possessions become more important than your values or your spiritual growth. Now, let's dive into a myth that's probably made a lot of people feel bad about themselves. The idea that if you're truly spiritual, you never feel angry, sad, jealous, or any other negative emotion. This myth paints a picture of spiritual people as these serene, smiling beings who float through life in a constant state of bliss. But let me tell you, that's not just unrealistic, it's downright harmful. This myth has its roots in some misunderstandings about spiritual teachings. Many spiritual traditions talk about finding inner peace and rising above negative emotions. And that's great. But somewhere along the line, people started thinking that meant never feeling those emotions at all. It's like they took the end goal and made it the starting point. The problem with this myth is that it sets an impossible standard where human beings and emotions, all emotions, are part of our experience. Trying to never feel angry or sad is like trying to never feel hungry or tired. It's just not how we're built. And when people believe this myth, it can lead to all sorts of issues. They might suppress their emotions, which can lead to mental health problems, or they might feel like spiritual failures every time they get upset about something, which can make them give up on their spiritual path altogether. But here's the truth. Being spiritual doesn't mean never feeling negative emotions. It means learning how to handle those emotions in a healthy way. In fact, many spiritual teachers would say that facing and working through our difficult emotions is a crucial part of spiritual growth. Think about it like this. Emotions are like weather patterns in your mind. Just as we can't control whether it rains or shines, we can't always control what emotions come up. What we can control is how we respond to those emotions. A spiritually mature person isn't someone who never feels angry. It's someone who can feel angry without lashing out or letting that anger control their actions. So what's a better way to approach emotions on your spiritual path? Here are some ideas. Practice awareness. Instead of trying to push away negative emotions, try to observe them without judgment. Notice how anger feels in your body or where sadness shows up. This kind of mindful awareness can help you understand your emotions better. Accept all emotions as part of the human experience. Remember, feeling emotions doesn't make you less spiritual. It makes you human. Look for the lesson. Often, our difficult emotions have something to teach us. Maybe your anger is pointing out an injustice that needs addressing, or your sadness is showing you what's really important to you. Practice compassion, especially self-compassion. When you're feeling a tough emotion, treat yourself with kindness. Talk to yourself like you would to a good friend who's going through a hard time. Use spiritual practices to help process emotions, not avoid them. Meditation, prayer, or whatever spiritual practice you prefer can be great tools for working through difficult feelings. But use them to face your emotions, not to run away from them. Remember that emotions are temporary. Just like the weather, our emotional states change. This too shall pass. It's also worth noting that many highly spiritual people throughout history experienced a full range of emotions. Think about spiritual leaders who got angry at injustice, or saints who wept with compassion. These weren't spiritual failures. These were examples of people fully engaging with the human experience. In fact, you could argue that being able to feel deeply, both the highs and the lows, is a sign of spiritual growth. It means you're fully present in your life, not numbed out or disconnected. So the next time you're feeling a negative emotion, don't beat yourself up about it. Instead, see it as an opportunity for growth and deeper understanding. Your emotions, all of them, are part of your spiritual journey. Embracing them, rather than trying to shut them out, can lead to real spiritual depth and maturity. Let's tackle another big misconception in the spiritual world. The idea that if you're on the right path, you should always feel happy and positive. This myth paints spiritual growth as a non-stop joyride, where every day is filled with rainbows and unicorns. But let me tell you, that's not how real spiritual growth works. This myth comes from a few different places. For one, there's a lot of talk in spiritual circles about raising your vibration and focusing on positive thoughts. And that's not necessarily wrong. Positive thinking can be powerful, but somewhere along the line, people started to think that meant never having a bad day or a negative thought. There's also the fact that when people start on a spiritual path, they often do experience periods of intense joy and peace. These experiences are amazing, but they're not the whole story. They're more like signposts along the way, not the destination itself. The problem with this myth is that it sets people up for disappointment and self-doubt. When you believe that being spiritual means always feeling good, what happens when you have a bad day, or when you're going through a tough time in life? You might start to think you're doing something wrong, or that you're not spiritual enough. This can lead to a cycle of guilt and frustration that actually gets in the way of real growth. But here's the truth. Spiritual growth often involves facing the parts of ourselves and our lives that aren't so pretty. It's about growing through challenges, not avoiding them. Some of the most profound spiritual growth happens during the toughest times in our lives. Think of it like this. Spiritual growth is more like climbing a mountain than riding a roller coaster. There are beautiful views along the way, sure, but there are also steep climbs, tough terrain, and moments when you're not sure if you can keep going. The point isn't to feel good all the time, it's to keep climbing, no matter what. So, what's a healthier way to approach this? Here are some ideas. Embrace the full spectrum of human experience. Remember that feeling sad, angry, or frustrated doesn't make you less spiritual. It makes you human. Look for the growth opportunities in tough times. When you're going through something difficult, ask yourself what you can learn from it. Practice acceptance. Instead of fighting against negative feelings or experiences, try to accept them as part of your journey. Cultivate resilience. Spiritual growth isn't about avoiding difficulties, it's about developing the strength to face them. Find balance. While it's good to focus on the positive, it's also important to acknowledge and process negative emotions and experiences. Remember that growth often feels uncomfortable. If you're always comfortable, you might not be growing. Some of the most spiritually advanced people in history went through incredibly tough times. They faced persecution, illness, loss, and doubt. But it was often through these experiences that they gained their deepest insights. So the next time you're not feeling on top of the world, don't take it as a sign that you're failing spiritually. Instead, see it as an opportunity for growth. Real spiritual maturity isn't about feeling good all the time. It's about finding peace and meaning in all of life's experiences, both the good and the bad. Now, let's dive into a myth that's been around for a long time. The idea that you absolutely need a guru or spiritual teacher to make real progress on your spiritual path. This belief has led many people to put their spiritual growth in someone else's hands, sometimes with not so great results. Where does this myth come from? Well, in many spiritual traditions, having a teacher or guide is a big deal. There are lots of stories about enlightened masters passing on secret wisdom to their students. And let's be honest, when we're starting out on a spiritual path, having someone to show us the way can seem pretty appealing. But here's the problem. This myth can lead people to give away their power. When we believe we need someone else to guide our spiritual journey, we might stop trusting our own inner wisdom. Worse, it can sometimes lead people into situations where they're taken advantage of by so-called spiritual leaders who aren't as enlightened as they claim to be. The truth is, while teachers and guides can be helpful, they're not absolutely necessary for spiritual growth. In fact, some would argue that true spirituality is about finding your own path and listening to your own inner guidance. Think about it like this. A spiritual teacher is like a tour guide in a new city. They can show you around, point out interesting sights, and give you some history. But at the end of the day, it's you who's experiencing the city. And sometimes the most memorable experiences come when you wander off on your own and discover things for yourself. So what's a better approach? Here are some ideas. Trust your inner wisdom. You have an inner guidance system. Learn to listen to it. Read widely. Explore different spiritual teachings and philosophies. See what resonates with you. Practice discernment. If you do decide to follow a teacher, always think critically. Don't just accept everything they say without question. Learn from many sources. Instead of relying on one guru, try to learn from many different people and experiences. Remember that the ultimate guru is life itself. Pay attention to the lessons that come from your everyday experiences. Join spiritual communities. You can learn a lot from discussing ideas with other people on a spiritual path. Develop your own practice. Whether it's meditation, prayer, or something else, find spiritual practices that work for you. It's worth noting that many great spiritual thinkers emphasize the importance of finding your own way. They encourage their followers to question everything, even their own teachings. That doesn't mean teachers can't be helpful. A good spiritual teacher or mentor can offer valuable guidance and support, but they should be more like a signpost on your journey, not the driver of your spiritual vehicle. Remember, at the end of the day, your spiritual journey is yours alone. No one else can walk it for you. While it's great to learn from others, the most important thing is to stay true to your own path and trust your own inner wisdom. Let's tackle a myth that's caused a lot of confusion and conflict: the idea that being spiritual means you have to reject science and logic. This belief has led many people to think they have to choose between being spiritual and being rational, as if the two were totally opposite. This myth probably comes from a few different places. For one, there's a long history of conflict between some religious institutions and scientific discoveries. Think about things like the Earth revolving around the sun, ideas that were once seen as going against spiritual teachings. There's also the fact that spiritual experiences often feel beyond logical explanation, which can make it seem like spirituality and logic don't mix. But here's the problem with this myth: it creates a false divide between two ways of understanding the world that can actually work really well together. When we believe we have to choose between spirituality and science, we miss out on the richness that comes from embracing both. The truth is, spirituality and science aren't enemies. They're more like two different languages describing the same reality. Science gives us the how of the universe, while spirituality often deals with the why. Both are valuable, and both can lead to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. Think about it like this: science and spirituality are like two different lenses you can use to look at the world. The scientific lens helps you see the details, the atoms, the cells, the stars. The spiritual lens helps you see the big picture, the connections, the meaning, the wonder. Using both gives you a much fuller view. So what's a better way to approach this? Here are some ideas. Embrace both spiritual and scientific ways of knowing. Recognize that they can complement each other rather than conflict. Look for the wonder in scientific discoveries. Many scientists describe feeling a sense of awe and spirituality in their work. Use critical thinking in your spiritual practice. It's okay to question teachings and look for evidence. Explore the growing field of scientific research on spiritual practices. There's lots of interesting work being done on how things like meditation affect the brain. Remember that many great spiritual leaders have also been interested in science. The Dalai Lama, for example, has regular dialogues with scientists. Stay open-minded. Both science and spirituality require us to be willing to change our views as we learn new things. Look for the spiritual implications of scientific ideas. Concepts like interconnectedness in ecology or the vastness of the universe can spark profound spiritual reflections. It's worth noting that throughout history, there have been many people who embraced both spirituality and science. Think about figures like Albert Einstein, who spoke about his sense of cosmic wonder, or modern scientists who study the effects of meditation on the brain. In fact, you could argue that a truly mature spirituality includes scientific understanding. After all, if we believe in a spiritual reality, wouldn't we want to understand as much as possible about the physical world it manifests in? So the next time someone tells you that being spiritual means rejecting science, remember that it doesn't have to be an either-or choice. You can embrace the logic and evidence-based approach of science while still exploring the depths of spiritual experience. In fact, combining both can lead to a richer, more complete understanding of life and the universe we live in. Let's address a myth that's caused a lot of confusion and even guilt for many people on a spiritual path: the idea that truly spiritual people don't care about money or success. This belief often paints a picture of spiritual individuals as detached ascetics, completely uninterested in worldly achievements or material comfort. Where does this myth come from? Well, many spiritual traditions do talk about detachment from material possessions and warn against the dangers of greed. There are stories of spiritual leaders giving up wealth and living simple lives. Plus, in a world where the pursuit of money can sometimes lead to harmful behaviors, the idea of completely letting go of material concerns can seem appealing. But here's the problem with this myth: it creates a false dichotomy between spiritual growth and practical life. It can make people feel guilty for wanting to improve their financial situation or achieve success in their careers. This guilt can actually become a barrier to spiritual growth and can prevent people from using their talents to make a positive impact in the world. The truth is, being spiritual doesn't mean you have to reject money or success. What matters is your relationship with these things and how you use them. Money can be a tool for good, allowing you to take care of yourself and others, support causes you believe in, and create positive change in the world. Success, when defined in a healthy way, can be about fulfilling your potential and making a meaningful contribution to society. Think of it this way: money and success are like water. They can be destructive if they're not channeled properly, but they can also nurture growth and create abundance when used wisely. So what's a healthier approach to this? Here are some ideas. Redefine success. Instead of just focusing on material wealth, think about success in terms of personal growth, positive impact, and living in alignment with your values. Practice gratitude for what you have while still being open to receiving more. View money as a tool, not an end in itself. Consider how financial resources can help you live your purpose and help others. Seek balance. It's possible to pursue financial stability and career success while also prioritizing spiritual growth. Be mindful of your motivations. Are you pursuing money or success out of fear or greed, or from a place of wanting to create value and contribute? Remember that many spiritual leaders have been successful in worldly terms. They've used their influence and resources to make a positive difference. Consider the concept of stewardship. If you have resources or talents, how can you use them in service of something greater than yourself? It's worth noting that throughout history, there have been many spiritual figures who've engaged with the world of business, politics, and worldly success. They've shown that it's possible to be spiritually focused while also being practically effective in the world. In fact, you could argue that true spiritual maturity involves being able to engage with all aspects of life, including money and success, in a balanced and conscious way. It's not about rejecting these things, but about approaching them with wisdom and using them as tools for growth and positive change. So the next time you feel guilty for wanting to improve your financial situation or achieve success in your career, remember that these goals can be compatible with spiritual growth. The key is to keep your spiritual values at the center, using money and success as means to live your purpose and contribute to the world, rather than as ends in themselves. Now let's tackle a myth that's led to a lot of frustration and disappointment for many spiritual seekers: the idea that spiritual awakening is a one-time, permanent event that solves all your problems. This belief often paints spiritual awakening as a magical moment, after which you're forever enlightened, always at peace and immune to life's challenges. This myth likely stems from dramatic stories of sudden enlightenment experiences in spiritual literature. We've all heard tales of people who had a profound revelation and were forever changed. Plus, the idea of a quick fix to all of life's problems is naturally appealing. But here's the problem with this myth. It sets unrealistic expectations and can lead to disappointment and self-doubt. When people believe that awakening should be a one-and-done deal, they might feel like they're failing if they still struggle with everyday problems or negative emotions after having profound spiritual experiences. The truth is, spiritual awakening is more often a process than a single event. It's a journey of continuous growth with ups and downs, insights, and challenges. Even people who have sudden, dramatic awakening experiences usually find that they still have work to do to integrate those insights into their daily lives. Think of it like this. Spiritual awakening is more like learning to play an instrument than flipping a light switch. You might have moments of breakthrough where suddenly things make sense, but true mastery comes from consistent practice and gradual improvement over time. So, what's a more realistic way to approach spiritual awakening? Here are some ideas. Embrace the journey. Understand that spiritual growth is an ongoing process, not a destination. Celebrate small awakenings. Pay attention to daily moments of insight and growth, not just big experiences. Practice patience and persistence. Real transformation often happens slowly over time. Don't judge your progress. Everyone's spiritual journey is unique, and there's no right way or speed to awaken. Integrate your insights. Focus on how you can apply spiritual realizations to your everyday life. Be prepared for challenges. Understand that awakening often involves facing difficult truths about yourself and the world. Stay open to continuous learning. Even the most enlightened teachers say they're always learning and growing. It's worth noting that many spiritual traditions actually describe awakening as a gradual process. They talk about different stages of insight and growth, acknowledging that spiritual development is ongoing. In fact, you could argue that a truly mature spiritual perspective involves embracing the ongoing nature of awakening. It's about being open to growth and insight in every moment, rather than waiting for one big event to solve everything. So the next time you feel frustrated that you're not awakened enough, remember that spiritual growth is a lifelong journey. Every challenge, every insight, every moment of peace or struggle is part of that journey. The key is to stay open, keep learning, and trust the process of your own unfolding awareness. Let's address a myth that's caused a lot of unnecessary stress and self-doubt for many people on a spiritual path. The idea that you have to be perfect to be truly spiritual. This belief often creates an image of spiritual people as flawless beings who never make mistakes, always make the right choices, and have completely overcome all their human flaws. Where does this myth come from? Well, many spiritual teachings do encourage us to strive for our highest potential. We hear stories about enlightened masters who seem to embody perfection. Plus, in a world where we're often very aware of our own shortcomings, the idea of achieving some kind of ultimate perfection can be very appealing. But here's the big problem with this myth. It's completely unrealistic and can actually hinder spiritual growth. When we believe we need to be perfect to be spiritual, we might hide our flaws, judge ourselves harshly for our mistakes, or even give up on our spiritual path altogether because we feel we can never measure up. The truth is, spirituality isn't about achieving perfection. It's about embracing our humanity, imperfections and all. It's about growing, learning, and becoming more aware, not about reaching some impossible standard of flawlessness. Think of it this way: spirituality is more like tending a garden than building a perfect machine. In a garden, there's always work to do, things grow and change, and even weeds can teach us something. Perfection isn't the goal, growth and harmony are. So what's a healthier way to approach this? Here are some ideas. Embrace your humanity. Remember that being spiritual doesn't mean transcending your human nature, but fully embracing it. Practice self-compassion. Treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding you'd offer a good friend. See mistakes as opportunities for growth. When you mess up, ask yourself what you can learn from the experience. Focus on progress, not perfection. Celebrate small improvements and steps forward on your path. Remember that vulnerability is strength. Being open about your struggles can deepen your connections and inspire others. Redefine what it means to be spiritual. Instead of perfection, think about qualities like awareness, compassion, and growth. Learn from spiritual teachers' humanity. Many great spiritual leaders have been open about their own struggles and imperfections. It's worth noting that throughout history, many spiritual traditions have actually emphasized the importance of embracing our imperfections. They teach that it's through acknowledging and working with our flaws that we grow. In fact, you could argue that true spiritual maturity involves accepting ourselves exactly as we are, while still being open to growth and change. It's about finding peace with our imperfect selves, rather than constantly striving for an impossible ideal. So the next time you feel like you're not spiritual enough because you made a mistake or struggled with something, remember that these very human experiences are part of your spiritual journey. Your imperfections don't disqualify you from being spiritual. They're the very things that make your spiritual path uniquely yours. Let's wrap up by addressing a myth that's become increasingly popular in some spiritual circles. The idea that being spiritual means you should always avoid negative people or situations. This belief often suggests that to maintain your spiritual vibe, you need to cut out anyone who brings you down or steer clear of any challenging circumstances. This myth probably stems from some valid spiritual concepts. Many teachings do emphasize the importance of surrounding yourself with positive influences and protecting your energy. Plus, in a world that can often feel overwhelming, the idea of creating a bubble of positivity around yourself can seem very appealing. But here's the problem with this myth. It can lead to a kind of spiritual bypassing, where we use spiritual ideas to avoid dealing with real-life challenges or difficult emotions. It can also lead to a lack of compassion and a tendency to judge others as less spiritual if they're going through tough times. The truth is, being spiritual doesn't mean avoiding all negativity. It means developing the strength and wisdom to navigate challenging situations with grace. It's about growing through difficulties, not running away from them. Think of it this way: spirituality is like building emotional and mental muscles. Just like physical muscles, these grow stronger when they face resistance. If we always avoid anything challenging, we miss out on opportunities for growth. So what's a more balanced approach to dealing with negativity? Here are some ideas. Practice discernment. There's a difference between toxic situations you should avoid and challenges that can help you grow. Set healthy boundaries. You can engage with difficult people or situations while still protecting your well-being. See challenges as opportunities for spiritual practice. Difficult situations can be chances to practice patience, compassion, or forgiveness. Focus on your response. Remember, you can't control others or external circumstances, but you can control how you react. Practice compassion. Often, Negative people are those who are struggling and in need of kindness. Maintain your center. Work on staying grounded in your own peace, even in challenging environments. Remember that light is most needed in dark places. Sometimes your spiritual practice might be most valuable when things are tough. It's worth noting that many great spiritual teachers have emphasized the importance of engaging with the world, not withdrawing from it. They've shown that it's possible to maintain inner peace while still dealing with life's challenges. In fact, you could argue that true spiritual maturity involves being able to maintain your center and your compassion even in difficult circumstances. It's not about creating a perfect problem-free bubble, but about bringing your spiritual practice into every aspect of life, including the messy, challenging parts. So the next time you're tempted to cut someone out of your life for being too negative or avoid a situation because it seems challenging, pause and consider whether this might actually be an opportunity for growth. Remember, true spirituality isn't about escaping the realities of life, it's about engaging with them more fully and consciously. As we come to the end of our journey through these spiritual myths, it's important to remember that spirituality is a deeply personal and often complex journey. These myths we've discussed, from the idea that you need to meditate for hours every day, to the belief that spiritual people are always happy, to the notion that spirituality means rejecting science or avoiding all negativity. They're all simplifications of a much richer and more nuanced reality. The truth is, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to spirituality. What works for one person might not work for another. The key is to find your own path, one that feels authentic and meaningful to you. This might involve borrowing ideas from different traditions, experimenting with various practices, and always being willing to question and evolve your beliefs. Remember, true spirituality isn't about achieving some perfect state of being. It's about growing, learning, and becoming more aware. It's about developing compassion for yourself and others. It's about finding meaning and purpose in your life and connecting with something larger than yourself. So as you continue on your spiritual journey, be kind to yourself. Embrace your humanity with all its messiness and imperfection. Stay curious and open-minded. And most importantly, trust your own inner wisdom. You have everything you need within you to navigate this path. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of spiritual myths. I hope that by unmasking these misconceptions, we've cleared the way for a more authentic, grounded, and fulfilling approach to spirituality. Remember, the goal isn't to be a perfect spiritual being, it's to be fully, authentically, gloriously human. Keep growing, keep questioning, and keep shining your unique light in the world.